You are about to embark on a 14-day raw foods diet. Good for you. You might be having a little bit of anxiety if you haven't done raw foods before, and I want to make sure that we get rid of that right off the bat. So let's go ahead and get really clear on exactly why the raw food diet is so beneficial for your body. And thank you for taking the time to really understand this. I think it empowers you as you go through the diet to make sure you have a firm grasp of all the benefits raw food has to offer you, because so many people come to the raw foods diet just looking for weight loss, and weight loss is a natural byproduct of eating raw foods, but it's certainly not the only benefit there is to be had. As a matter of fact, it's much more about keeping the weight off than it is just losing the initial weight, but also you're going to have benefits like amazingly beautiful hair and glowing skin, and you're just going to feel great. We have people call us on day 4 or 5 letting us know they feel like they're walking on air. They just have more stamina and strength than they've felt in years. But ultimately, our point of this 14-day raw foods cleanse is to empower you. We want to make sure that these recipes are easy for you to follow and easy to understand, so that when this cleanse is done, you'll be able to create an easy to follow cooking routine that works for you with your lifestyle. Because ultimately, our goal here is to help you develop healthy habits that last your entire lifetime, not just this 14-day cleanse. So let's jump right in and make sure you understand why raw cuisine. What's so great about eating this way? Well, there's 3 points I'd like to cover with you. The first is enzymes, and the second is alkalization, and the third is energy. Now, there are global and environmental reasons for eating raw food too. Obviously, eating locally grown organic food has very strong and beneficial environmental impact, but we're not going to cover that. I just really want you to understand for your body what the benefits are. So let's just jump right into enzymes. Now, if I give you a whole, juicy, delicious apple, and you set it somewhere where it was out of sight, out of mind, that apple would wither and wilt and eventually get black and moldy and gross looking. And if we just left it there, it would eventually turn back into nothing. Even you and I, we have all the enzymes in our need to turn into nothing. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? So when we consume raw foods, instead of the normal process of eating eating cooked foods, we bring these cooked foods into our body. Then enzymes, which are just catalysts, enzymes make other processes in the body possible, right? So if we bring in cooked food, the body's enzymes have to stop what they're doing, which I like what they're normally doing. They're keeping me looking good and feeling good, and they're regenerating tissue. They're just amazingly busy little enzymes in my body. I like them to stay on task, right? But when I bring food into the body that doesn't have its enzymes intact, they have to be diverted from their normal tasks to the task of digesting this food. Now, when we eat raw food, that has its enzymes completely intact. Why? Why does it have its enzymes intact? Because we didn't cook it. Because anytime we heat food over 118 degrees, the enzymes start to die off. And when we eat food that is processed and cooked and completely devoid of enzymes, that's when our body has to work the hardest. Now, let's talk next about alkalization. Alkalization refers to the pH scale, acid and base, acid being 1, base being 14. We are shooting for a very neutral pH of 7.365 in terms of our blood pH. Now, the blood is the environment of our body, right? All the oxygen, nutrients, minerals, everything's transferred via the blood. So we want to focus specifically on the pH of the blood. Now, if we take a look at what we normally eat in a standard American diet, and that diet is spread like wildfire around the world, so let's don't kid ourselves that if we're not American, we don't have this issue, because we do. But when we look at the scale of what most people are eating, all the processed foods, enriched flours, sugars, alcohol, coffee, meat, cheese, you name it, all that stuff is falling on the very acidic side of the scale. Whereas, whole, rich, alkaline greens, those are falling on the base end of the scale. Now, you might think this is a simple sort of tit for tat, one for one sort of equation. It's not. It takes many more parts base to neutralize an acid. So we would essentially need to eat greens morning and night until we were green in the face, to try and neutralize a normal acidic lifestyle. We just don't consume that much food. So we need to start removing those acids from the body. Now, there's some very amazing literature on this. If you want to take it further, I highly recommend you getting the books of Dr. Robert Young. There's 3 books I could recommend of his off the top of my head. One being Sick and Tired, the other being The pH Miracle for Weight Loss and The pH Miracle for Diabetes. Amazing reads. He goes very deeply into this information, but I'm going to try to walk you through just the basics so you have a firm understanding. But one thing I want to share with you is Dr. Young's belief that there is only one sickness and one disease. And he believes that that is the over-acidification of the body due to an inverted way of living, eating, and thinking. And of course, we are primarily focused on eating, but that is a whole body item, right? We can't take that out of the equation. So the way that we live and how even how we eat and how we look starts to affect the way that we're thinking. So let's take a look a little closer at this and see if we can understand what's going on here. How do we get so acidic? Now, again, the standard American diet is very acidic, very full of processed foods, refined sugars and flours, alcohols, coffees, breads, all the things that we just looked at on that pH scale. And so that has us feeling not so great. Those foods put us on an emotional roller coaster that involves a lot of negative emotions and thought patterns. And then top that off with the fact that our environment is just a little polluted nowadays, unfortunately. Now, when we look at how that acts in the body, or what effect that has on the body at the cellular level, cells will try their best to make it work. We have an amazing body, and right down to every little individual cell, it will just do its best to thrive and thrive. And in attempt to do so, they often alter themselves to the point where they're no longer communicating efficiently with other cells, and they're not removing their waste well. And when their waste is not removed, that again adds more acid into the cycle, to the point where if that acid gets out of control, our body becomes a haven for things like candida, which is yeast, and fungus and bacteria, even molds. And when these organisms thrive in their bodies and they live on the sugars and carbs that we eat, well, everything that eats has to excrete. And when it excretes, that means that our body not only has to deal with everything we're eating and whatever toxicity is normally in our body, we're also dealing with the waste of all these little organisms that start to thrive within our bodies. So that eventually will bring us to a point where we will start to be symptomatic and feel lousy and look lousy. And when we start to feel and look that way, of course, that affects our thought patterns, and we start, having a little depression or anxiety or just not feeling. And again, that compounds and compounds and compounds and just keeps adding to this downward spiral. Now, we want to break that cycle by alkalizing. But before we move on, I want to make sure that you understand and just give you a little visual cue here on the cellular impact that we were talking about. Now, if we were to look at healthy, organized blood cells under a microscope, they have this beautiful, round, perfect shape like a little ball, and they have this beautiful glowing white light emitting from them, and they're all perfectly round, and they have this little energy field around them that just looks perfect and glowing, right? Now, that energy field allows them to motate through the body very easily and very well. It allows them to communicate with other cells, and it allows them to remove their waste efficiently. That's really the way that they should look, like these perfect little glowing balls. But as you can see, when they are in an environment that is acidic, they just start to go haywire. They're not perfect circles anymore, and that starts to affect their mobility through the body. It certainly affects the way that they communicate, and as we discussed, it affects the efficiency of their waste being removed. And that again gets worse and worse and worse as we become more acidic. And again, let's look at how that can manifest. So those are what the cells are looking like. What does it look like in the mirror? How do I feel? Well, the first thing that a very acidic body will generally do, and let me start by saying that your acids will settle into the weakest part of your body. So a lot of this will depend on your particular family history and your particular genetics, but one very common way that the body handles all this acid is to store it in fats. It'll hold on to fats. And that's just like taking the acid, which is very caustic, right? And it can hurt our vital organs and our tissues. And so our body wants to put it somewhere. It'll store it inside fat, just like a little Tupperware container. It'll put it in there to keep the rest of our body safe from that very dangerous acid. Well, that's all good and fine. We want to be safe. We don't want our organs harmed, but we don't really want to be fat either. So if we are eating an acid and we continue to eat an acidic diet, we know we're going to pack on the pounds. Now, another option for our body to sort of or cancel out that acid is to neutralize it. And a great neutralizing chemical is calcium because it's very basic. But it's going to leach that calcium from our bones. I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in increasing the aging factor of my bones. I don't want them being brittle and breaking easily. I want good, healthy, strong bones. So the concept of leaching bones, leaching calcium from the bones, that doesn't turn me on either. Now, another thing that the body can do is it can add lipids into the bloodstream, which is just another way of saying that it raises your cholesterol. Now, all those lipids may serve to protect the interior pathways of the blood, right? Because if the bloodstream is a little more acidic, all those pathways need to be protected so that our arteries and veins don't break down from exposure to those acids. So again, our body's producing something that is very safe for us, that helps us out a lot. But again, there are a lot of problems that come along with increased cholesterol, right? And the potential to clog arteries and veins. All that is also very, very dangerous. Another thing the body can do is just try to dilute all that acid. And a great way to do that is to just retain water. Just water it down a little bit. Make sure that that acid is not so strong. And another extreme thing the body can do at the cellular level is the cells can mutate. And they do that in attempt to survive. But what is another word for mutating cells within the body? Cancer. That's right. Cancer. So you can see if we let this cycle go, we are dealing with not only being fat and having weak bones and all this other crazy stuff. Again, like I said in the beginning, it's going to depend on where your body has a family history of weakness or genetic weakness or maybe even injury in the past, because the problem will be solved by the weakest area of your body. It's sort of it's the way that it goes is that these acids will settle into weaker parts of the body. So no one can tell you which way your body's going to choose to handle it, but I don't know about you. I'm not interested in my body having to handle it in any of those ways. I would rather take control of my health by alkalizing my body. I can control what I eat. Maybe I can't control the environment. Maybe I can't control my genetics. But you know what? I can darn well control what I choose to put in my mouth at every meal. And so can you. If we just alkalize the body, it will heal itself. Now, I don't want you to think that alkalizing your body means you're just going to sit down and eat a plate of chard. That's not the case here. This 14 days is about eating delicious, healthy, whole, real foods. I have had people tell me that they have not treated their family and themselves to such delicious gourmet food in years, and that this diet changes not only the way they look and feel, but also the way they sort of think about the concept of cooking. It makes them interested and excited to spend time in the kitchen because they know that it is their pathway to have amazing health. It makes them feel empowered. It makes them feel like they have control. And you do. We all do. So, how do we turn it around? Again, that downward spiral is a spiral that can go upward too. If we just clean the body, that will be a self-propelling improvement cycle, just like it was a nasty downward spiral. So we cleanse the body, we start consuming rich, whole, delicious foods. And when we're eating raw foods, these are very nutrient dense and again, enzyme rich foods. So we start with cleansing the body, and then that's going to help us get everything under control. All those populations of organisms that were adding waste before, well, they're just not happy in that alkaline environment. It's no good for them anymore. So they just won't thrive there. And as their waste is no longer something that our body has to deal with, we start to look better. We start to feel better. And as we feel better, we know that that is going to contribute to us being more alkaline, having better thoughts about ourselves and our body and the way we feel. And then all we really need to do is just nurture our bodies. We need to keep it up. We need to drink plenty of water. We need to exercise so that every cell of our body is getting plenty of oxygen. And we need to make sure we continue on with a very healthy diet so that we get all all of the vitamins and minerals that we need. And when we live that way, of course, we continue to feel good and even better. And again, that contributes back and contributes back so that eventually you're on the same spiral, but this time you're headed towards a life of vitality. That is ultimately what we're trying to get to. Now, one last thing I want to touch on in terms of raw foods, and some people find this interesting. I found this very profound when I first saw these images. Now, these images are taken by a very sensitive machine that can measure the megahertz of anything, but in this case, we're measuring the megahertz coming off of food, the energy coming off of the food. Now, if you look at this closely, look at that raw lentil sprout. That's just a single one little sprout, right? And it has all this beautiful, violet and red and white light coming off of it. And then you look again at the one that's cooked. Now, that lentil sprout has been steamed for 1 minute. Steamed for 1 minute. And look at the difference. Look at how the light patterns and the energy has been diminished just from that brief minute of steaming it. So you can see if we're baking something for 45 minutes or we're boiling the life out of some spinach, you can just imagine the difference in the energy that our body is able to pull out of this food. Now, if we were able to photosynthesize like plants, we wouldn't have to eat at all, right? So ultimately, we are trying to suck up from our food, to gather in from our food, the energy of the sun. And plants do that so very efficiently. And then why would we take that very efficient life form that pulls in light and transfers it into our body and boil the heck out of it so that light is diminished or maybe even no longer there? We wouldn't. We don't want to do that. That's not it. That's not what we're about. Let's just look at one more of these because this one was amazingly profound. This is just a fresh cabbage. This is a bit of cabbage. And then this is dropped into boiling water for 1 minute. And look at that. I mean, that just thing goes from this beautiful glowing blue orbs to this crazy thing that looks like a dead alien. So again, just bringing home the concept that when we cook the food, we are changing the energy that is available to our bodies. Now, I really think that raw food has it all. Hopefully this has helped you to see that you are on the right path for the next 14 days and you are going to attain that rockin' body that you're looking for and feel amazing. And you can do it with just simple, amazing, delicious food. You're only going to spend 4 days cooking. I mean, you might spend a little time putting the meals together here and there, but for the most part, you make all the staples on those preparation days. And this delicious raw food has it all. I mean, you're going to get all the enzymes the food has to offer. This menu is very, very alkalizing. You're going to get all the energy because you know you have not heated that food above 118 degrees. And best of all, it's going to be very easy for you to enjoy this food because it is delicious. I mean, you're not even going to go without desserts and all of your favorite foods. You're going to be able to enjoy amazing dishes. Even the kids will enjoy them, and definitely start getting in the habit of drinking your delicious green drink. So all in this 14 days, you're going to eat amazing raw food and start moving towards that rockin' body you've always wanted. Get to it.